It's
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
But bit of a weird one.
If you're watching this one live,
Yeah.
that means that you haven't come to our live Christmas special.
Yeah. What were you thinking?
Shame on you.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to say. I don't, there's no judgment, but there is a bit of judgment.
We couldn't just leave you in the house though, could we? While we're having so much fun down at the Beefeater.
Oh wow, you're missing out now.
You're massively missing out. You'll have me and Tom are having a ball now. Where you're sat in the house expecting to see something here.
But you know what? We're like a good Father Christmas. Father Christmas has naughty and nice list, and he only gives presents to the nice ones and not the naughty ones. Yeah. We are like better Father Christmas in the sense that we even give to those who don't deserve it.
Yeah, we like to give, don't
we? We do. And so, I mean, some people will say to me, Tom, I live in Scotland. How can I come to... It's not that far.
It's not.
It's not that far. But anyway, you know who you are. Yeah. But only messing. Well, anyway, what we thought we'd do is we'd give you a bonus episode anyway. Yeah. So here we are.
So thank you for tuning in anyway, Nuggets.
Yeah.
Well done.
And who have we got joining us today?
We've got Gav Calver.
The wonderful Gav Calver. So we said to you a while ago, we're going to do some bonus episodes. We're going to do some recordings. And so this is a pre-recorded interview with Gav Calver. And he's the CEO of the Evangelical Alliance. And so I got that right.
He's possibly our most famous guest.
He is. He's got his fancy title. He's a great lad. Yeah, he's a great lad. And you'll enjoy this conversation. And so we'll go straight into it. And God bless you. Next time, come along to our live gig, all right?
Yeah, there'll be trouble.
You nuggets.
Hello,
and welcome to a bonus episode of Wednesday Night at Finnegan's.
Yeah, and it's not Wednesday night, Tom, is it?
It's not Wednesday night.
It's actually Monday morning, and it's absolutely freezing.
I'm on the hot juice. Look at that, steaming away.
You can actually see our breath. Finnegan's needs an insulation grant or something.
It needs a serious upgrade.
It definitely does. It's not great. Like, it's absolutely freezing. But
it's an exciting one, though.
Oh, we've been building to this because we tried it, didn't we? It didn't work.
We attempted the technology once and it didn't work, but very graciously our guests allowed us to give it another go.
Very graciously, I think. Yeah.
And so we've got the fantastic Gav Calver with us, everyone. Let's give him a warm welcome. Welcome to Finnegan's. Nice to see you, Gav. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, great to be here. Doing well. It's not as cold down here, down south.
It's always warmer down south. That's the only thing.
You get everything, don't you?
That's the only thing I miss about being down south.
All the weather, everything.
Exactly.
Down south.
Who's going to level up the weather?
I don't know. Global warming, possibly. I'm here. I'm lights on everywhere. It's trying to warm the place up. Yeah.
Very good. Well, Gav, thanks so much for joining us to do this today. Do you know what, Gav? I've got a lot of respect for Gav. I've not met Gav before,
I've met him once.
Have you?
Yeah.
And he's agreed to do this after he met you.
Meet me once. we had a pint of Guinness in a pub.
Oh, so he's effectively had the Finnegan's treatment already.
Westminster area when he on one of his first days in the job when he was the evangelist for the Evangelical Alliance. We haven't met.
Yeah.
Very good. So so let me give him a proper introduction anyway.
Go on, Tom.
Because Gav is the CEO of the Evangelical Alliance, and he is a key figure in this nation in terms of the Christian faith, and he, is a very important guy, and we are very blessed to have him with us. So we thought, Gav, straight away we'd just get into the really important stuff. Even in the news recently, census saying that 50%, below 50% of people would call themselves Christians. There's a lot going on in the world today, so important issues. Gav, what's going on with your fantasy football team, mate? You are
having a
struggling, really struggling.
I am having a mare.
You are.
I'll tell you something. The mistake I made, I didn't get Haaland till he'd already scored 3 hat-tricks. And if you haven't had Haaland from the start, you're out. It's as simple as that.
What were you thinking with that? Did you see him in the Charity Shield and just think he's not going to do it in the Premier League? I remember at that point we felt like Nunez was going to be as good as Haaland, and then that backfired, didn't it?
Just a bit.
I think the problem is I've seen so many players come who've been prolific in other leagues. And it takes a while in the Premier League normally.
Yes.
But Haaland, let's be honest, is the perfect specimen of a footballer. It's not fair. He should only be able to play less or play on one leg or something.
Yeah.
So that was the problem. Because normally, if you don't support a Premier League team, you're better at fantasy football because there's no heart involved.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. Because the thing I love about fantasy is I end up cheering a Man United goal. Like a fantasy football, you're like, what's going on in the world? I mean, but you feel conflicted.
You're an Arsenal fan. I'm a Liverpool fan. Yeah. I find myself cheering a Man United goal. That is just like unheard of. Yeah. It's like, oh, I can't explain.
But you feel conflicted. You do feel some like guilt about that. So I guess you're being an AFC Wimbledon supporter. You are completely guilt-free.
Yeah. Well, Wimbledon are my Premier League team. You know, I had a season ticket for 10 years in the Premier League, which was Wimbledon. Okay. So they are my Premier League team. I have to say though, Alan, I'm not upset. I'm a bit disappointed in you.
Go on.
A Liverpool fan cheering a Man United goal. I live with a Liverpool fan. This doesn't seem right. I don't understand.
That's what fantasy football does to you. It absolutely it messes with your head. It gets into you and does stuff that would never happen normally. Probably a bit like the Holy Spirit, Gav.
That's
it. Just a little.
It's infuriating.
I think boys need to care less about fantasy football.
The actual team. No, literally, Gav. I went to the Wimbledon final, Liverpool Wimbledon. I was in the Wimbledon end as a kid when you beat us in the FA Cup final. It was horrible. You were lovely. You didn't. There was no trouble. Don't get me wrong, but it was just horrible. It was a horrible day for me. That
I've been at
16 or something like
that.
And
do you know what? I used to go, Gav. My mate was a Wimbledon fan back in the day, so we used to go as a kid. I went to Selhurst Park and saw him playing Effin Okoku and
don't be swearing.
As that came out, I thought, crikey, have I said that right? And I think I just about got it right.
Just about got that right.
Vinnie Jones.
You need to be careful. Yeah. The hard thing being a Wimbledon fan for me is I've had a season ticket since I became a fan in '91.
Yeah.
So I'm not old enough to have gone to in the '80s, my dad wouldn't take me to football because of what was going on with the hooliganism and stuff. So I've had a season ticket largely from '91 till now. We've won nothing. But the Wimbledon highlight for me was this. I preached at a church in Stoke.
Yeah.
And I mentioned the fact I support Wimbledon. And afterwards, this old lady comes up to me and says, I don't know if you'd have heard of him, but my son used to play for Wimbledon. It was Robbie Earle's mum. Now, Robbie Earle is the biggest hero of my lifetime.
He's
the best Premier League footballer to never have played for England, who could have done, in my view. Amazing player.
Yeah.
There was his mum. So suddenly all this ministry I was doing, all these people who wanted prayer, I am talking to Robbie Earle's mum. Go away.
That's it.
Yeah.
The closest we've got is Jamie Carragher's dad, and he's been to a funeral or two at Emmanuel.
It wasn't a funeral, it was a christening.
Oh, was it a christening?
Yeah. Bit different then,
different vibe.
Yeah, he came, didn't he, Jamie Carragher's dad.
Very good.
We've had a rugby league player as well.
I don't know who he was, but he popped along.
He was from somewhere else.
He played for a national team, didn't he? He was an impressive guy. He was a very impressive guy.
Big lad.
Very good. Okay, well, we thought anyway, Gav, what we'd ask you a little bit about, because at Finnegan's we touched on a bit of faith and we talk about our faith, and I thought it'd be really interesting to hear, a guy in your kind of role. How did for you? Did you come to faith? It's just not a given. I think if I'm right, you did grow up in a Christian family. I know that when we were chatting before the interview, Alan keeps calling you. He keeps forgetting that your name's Gav and calling you by your dad's name. It's like one of those old people things, where he just keeps going, that's not his name, mate. Like, who are you talking about? But,
anyway, Clive.
But
yeah, I mean, Alan, just for context, my dad moved to America 25 years ago.
Wow.
So, I'm from the kind of Christian mafia.
Oh, right. Go on.
I'm the 8th generation called Reverend, not Mister.
Really? Wow.
It's nearly all on my mum's side.
Okay. Yeah.
So my dad did the job I do now, but so did my granddad.
Wow.
Which was my mum's dad. Yeah. And my granddad's granddad preached to 1,000 people on his 100th birthday. So you've got proper Christian mafia going on. Wow. And for those who don't really understand some of the Christian space, we've got these two big things. So there's an organization called Tear Fund, which is a bit like, for people, it's a bit like a Christian Oxfam. My granddad started Tear Fund, and my old man started something called Spring Harvest, which is a bit like a lower level Christian Glastonbury, right?
Wow.
So I need a good idea. So firstly, I need a good idea.
You got to start.
Yeah. I grew up in this Christian home where I was one of 4. And it felt like it was very exposed. My parents were quite well known. It was all that sort of stuff. And you had to be a certain type of Christian. And I wasn't interested. And the other 3 didn't sin. They didn't do anything wrong. They always got in. They were brilliant, and they were geniuses. I got the looks, and I sinned for the four of us.
Who told you got the looks?
Oh, I definitely did. It's the podcast. Let's not forget.
You know what, Gav? Because it's interesting. I grew up in a Christian family, and my sister also. She got the brains. She was born on Christmas Day, so she had it all. Do you know? But it was I found growing up in a Christian family, it's not a given you're going to be a Christian, is it? Off the back of that, hey, and it's not even a given that you're going to
be the opposite.
Yeah, sometimes it drives people away, you know, in some senses.
Yeah. Well, half of kids born in Christian homes don't take on their parents' faith.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the UK sort of, but the other three in my family were like, they weren't just being Christians, they were giving little words at the front of church and baking cookies to help starving people and all kinds of stuff. And then there was me, sort of, I got banned from church when I was 14 for 6 months. And I remember
been banned from church as well.
There we go. But that's when I could play Sunday football because I wasn't allowed to go to church, so my mum couldn't make me.
Yeah.
But then I left church stuff. I tried to become a footballer, right? This sounds far more exciting than it was. I got to semi-pro level, then I got an injury, so it was the end. I played with two guys that played for England for quite a while, which was a guy called Scott Parker, a guy called Sean Wright Phillips. So I played at a level, but I was never going to be a footballer. But I put all my energy in that. Then when I was 17, my mum and dad moved to America, and I spent the next 9 months or so messing about, let's say. But the day after my 18th birthday party, I sat on a park bench on my own and became a Christian. There was no mood music. There was no speaker at the front. There was nothing. For me, Jesus was an auntie figure. Someone I knew existed, but I just didn't like hanging out with.
Yeah.
And I'm all or nothing. So I'm either, there's no half-hearted anything with me. So I tried some other stuff. It let me down. I sat on a bench and I said to God, I said, I know you're real. I'm going to surrender my full life to you and I will do whatever you want with the rest of my life. That was the stupid prayer. I should have just surrendered my life and then said, and I'll make the rest of my decisions.
Yeah.
But that was it. Turned around. And the hardest people to tell were my parents.
Wow.
Because even when it is the most important thing in my life, you still don't want them to be right and you to be wrong.
Yeah.
Especially at that age.
Yeah. And what was it, Gav, then? Like, because for me, growing up, I think my parents, I could see faith made a real difference to their life. So it wasn't just a Sunday thing, you know, Dad went, you know, on mission trips, traveled the world. He had like this adventurous life. And so for me, and I could see how God was real in his life. So in some ways, although I had doubts and I, you know, still have doubts, you know, at times, but I could see that God was real from their lifestyle. Did you have that? Or what was the point that, you know, you went from like kids getting banned out of church to like suddenly sitting on that bench? Can you pinpoint anything that changed that time?
There's a few things, right? So I never doubted the existence of God.
Okay.
I'd seen people get out of wheelchairs. I've seen legs grow when they've been prayed for.
Wow.
My sister had 5 epileptic fits a day till she got prayed. None since she was age of 6. You know, there's no doubt in the existence of God for me. That wasn't the question. Yeah. But every Christian I met, I didn't want to be like. and the problem as well was I knew, because I'm all or nothing. It's a bit like we talked about football before, right? I am not a Wimbledon fan. I'm a proper supporter. I own shares in the club. I've got a season ticket. It's all or nothing, you know. When England lost on Saturday night, my wife got cross with me again because both my children, 16 and 12, weeping. And she turns to them and says, "You have handed on your ridiculous, passionate, hopeful nonsense to them. You have ruined my children's lives." Right? That's who I am.
That's just what you want to hear as a parent, isn't it?
No, not really. I think also, for me, it was like, is this enough?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to throw my whole lot in? And when I realised that everything else lets you down and everything else is broken, I realised that following Jesus was but I needed to get there for myself.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'd say is everything the adult church loves about me is why the church hated me as a young person. That's how it felt.
Interesting.
So I'll go against the status quo. I'll say stuff people won't say. I'll be brave in a space other people wouldn't be brave. All of those things unredeemed got me banned from church.
Wow.
All of those things redeemed lead me to being the person I am in the church now. It's interesting. It's a fine line.
I find that interesting, even in terms of, you know, some of our mates and that who would never dream of coming to church, or if they come, they would feel like it's a foreign land to them. You know, they'd be like, what? This is not a place for me to belong. But then those attributes of those kind of people then the church is like desperately missing and crying out for.
We had Rob Thomas on, didn't we?
Yeah.
He's a lad who's a comedian, and he's he would say he's agnostic.
Yeah.
Although he didn't know what that word meant. But that's what he was explaining.
Let's tell you what you are.
Yeah. And he'd been to Spring Harvest, so yeah. So our people who watch this will know a little bit about that. Because he mentioned it, didn't he, going there and that. And
he'd had a positive experience, and he'd had a really positive experience of faith.
Yeah, but he didn't have anyone to relate to.
Yeah,
in church, he kept saying, "I'm not like them."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, and I'm particularly probably back in the 80s or so. When was this? 80 odd, yeah.
Not 90s. You're making me older.
I was going to say we're not as old as you, Alan.
But the style of church, maybe it was different down south. I don't know, but up here the style of church was very much like you explained your siblings to be. You know, this perfection thing where everyone's shiny, happy people holding hands. You know?
Yeah.
It was all, and you all had to be that to belong. Where I think we work hard on. In a positive way to try and be a bit more authentic than that. And I think then people spot that and can relate more. Because he actually said, Rob said, if I'd have met people like you, then it might have been different.
Yeah. He couldn't see himself in the church, couldn't see himself in the, you know, literally like in terms of a person like him, who from his background, who had found faith, which is just so alarming, isn't it? It is alarming.
It's sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. But we have to be honest with ourselves, because then we can change stuff.
Yeah.
So I would say there were two. For me, there's two areas that church we need to look at ourselves a little bit. One is the area of just fellas generally. Yeah. You know, because church can be so passive, non-participative, singing songs to your girlfriend. What's this all about? It's the whole. It's not the substance, but the style. I think the style is interesting, and let's not blame women for that. It's male leadership that creates a church that appeals more to women. Yeah. And then the second bit I'd say is our youth ministry. Okay. So I did 14 years at Youth for Christ before I do what I do now, which works with lots of young people. In our youth ministry, the default is to keep the 10 conformist kids and let the 2 or 3 difficult ones leave the group for the sake of the 10.
Wow.
Whereas what we need to do is find the tactics to keep the 2 or 3 naughtier ones engaged. Because people say to me, where are all the Christian leaders? And they probably were in the youth group, but they got kicked out because they didn't conform.
Wow.
Because what we don't realise is there's 2 things. It's the most rebellious thing you can be today as a Christian.
Yeah.
You know, what could be more rebellious than to be a Christian in this secular culture we're in? Yeah. And what we need is to find these people that are like kicking against the system just to do it for Jesus, not against them. And then I think the other thing as well is we just need to get serious about the fact that everyone fits. Why have we created a caricature of what it means to be a Christian? So I never felt I fitted because I wasn't good enough. Yeah. And actually, in the end, my greatest, on a one-to-one, I don't think I've ever led another man to follow Jesus who doesn't love his footy, quite likes going for a pint. You know, so it comes down to those things. We've got to get back to, let's be normal, but let's be normal people who've met the author of life. It changes everything.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So good, Gav. So how do you go then, Gav, from... You know, and you're saying you're an all-out person. you become a Christian, and then for you, is it like, right? Well, if I'm not messing around now, so I'm all in. So is it like then you're thinking you're going to work for a church or do that kind of work? How do you end up doing what you're doing now? Yeah. Was that always the plan as soon as you made that change, or how did that come around?
Yeah, I believe in a God who speaks. Now I know that's a bit weird for people, but I did feel a prompting from God that I was now to go into the industry I would least like to, which is the one that my family are from. Because this is the thing is, some people look at me and they think I'm like Simba in The Lion King, you know, held up and promised to the Evangelical Alliance. Yeah, there you go. Some Christian Rafiki holds me up and says, here he is. It wasn't like that. The other 3 siblings wanted to do that, which they're not doing. Wow. And I didn't want to do that, which I am doing. But within 9 months, I was at Bible college, which, to be honest, sometimes was as fun as it sounds. But I was at Bible college, and in that space, being trained straight from Bible college, went to Youth for Christ, and just had to go. It's all about me telling other people about Jesus, really. So I think some Christians say, this job is what God told me to do. I'm not quite sure that's the language I use. I have more of a sense that I'm a good news person in a bad news world. Where can I share that good news?
Okay.
Very good.
So I did 14 years at a place called Youth for Christ, because 86% of people who come to faith are under 25.
Wow.
So if you like, young lives are wet cement, old lives are dry cement.
Yeah.
Have a go with the wet cement made sense.
Yeah.
And then about 14 years into that, just felt a sense that there's not just 7.5 million people in Britain, there's 67 million. And there's no age sections in heaven. So I came to the Evangelical Alliance, which, though that sounds very pretentious in its name, is basically all about seeing everyone in the UK come to know Jesus. And so it's a natural space. But yeah, the same leader with the same passion just changed the voicing of the passion. That's all that happened, really. It was like a switch in me. It wasn't dramatic. It was just, is this true or not? If it's true, off we go.
Great.
Fabulous.
So tell us a bit about the Evangelical Alliance then, because I get, for a lot of people who are listening, you know, obviously we're paid up members, so we are
happy days.
we're part of it and know what you guys are doing. But for people who are maybe outside the church, how would they interact with you? How would they know who you guys are and what you do? Maybe give us a little explanation of what you do as an organisation.
Yeah, well, we were started in 1846 with two aims that remain our two aims now. So we're either really focused or we're rubbish at our job. I like to think it's the first. And the first aim is to unite the church in reaching those who don't know Jesus. And the second aim is to give the church a clear and effective voice into every layer of society. Okay. So we're a membership organisation. Churches, individuals and organisations join us. And there's an estimated 2 million evangelicals in the country. We're kind of the umbrella body, the spokespeople for them. So we try to bring the church together to do effective things, but we also knock on the door of the government and say, hang on, pipe down, don't do that, or hang on, please do this. So, but we can take the voice of the church into there. So now in a cost of living crisis, we held a reception in Westminster at Parliament about 3 weeks ago, loads of MPs. This is what the church can do to help. Yeah. This is also what we can't do to help.
Yeah.
We also go in to do less fun things like that, to speak on things like abortion or marriage or other stuff into the government.
Okay.
Because that matters too. So I think if someone's never heard of us, doesn't go to church at all, this is not what we are, but probably the easiest way to understand us is we're like a political party, but we're not one. But we're like a political party for Christians, if you like. Yeah. So we have membership that comes together, that speaks with one voice, and that seeks to make the UK a better place, but not just a better place politically. We're trying to make the UK a healthier place spiritually. We're trying to see many people come to know Jesus, but we're also trying to make sure that there's freedom for Christians in the country to be the church.
Great. Fantastic. And I think it's an interesting time, isn't it? You know, we've just made national news about the census, you know, with Christianity dropping below 50% for the first time in a long time. Well, I didn't read the full article, but I'm imagining if maybe
the headlines on Sky.
But dropping from, I think it was in quite a short period of time, people had gone, you know, with looking at 60% or something. The Gav will know the figures, dropping below 50%.
Yeah, but it's probably been like that for years, hasn't it? But no one's really thought they could change that in their thinking. So they've just answered more honestly now, I think, in a sense.
Well, that's it. What did you make of that, Gav? You know, you're kind of in a unique position to be looking at the picture nationally and Christianity nationally. What did you make when that news came out? Because some people might go, hang your heads down and think, oh, pants, you know, like you've got those two aims, like dropping the ball, Gav, come on. Like, what did you make of that kind of news?
Well, I just thought it was the least surprising and least exciting news that could have been, really. I mean, because the question in the census on faith is very binary. You are either completely X or completely Y.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Christians have got a problem, have they? Atheists have less than 0.2% of the population.
Wow.
So very few people, if you actually go through it, we hear the headline, we're not a Christian country. Okay. Christians are overwhelmingly the largest group in this country by a long way.
Wow.
So if you want to look at it that way, I think there's many other people with far bigger problems. And actually, in our work with the government, we will point out, you listen to the National Secular Society, but less than half of 1% are humanists. So why'd you do that?
Yeah,
no, it's not bad.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, let's be honest, right? The kind of chat we're having, let's just cut to the chase. I'm not bothered how many people tick a box Christian.
Yeah.
I'm bothered how many people go to church, read their Bibles and pray.
Yeah.
And actually, of those three, I'm really bothered how many people are reading their Bibles and praying. then I want them to go to church too. And what's encouraging is, over the last 15 years, the practicing Christian percentage in the UK is the same.
Right. Fantastic.
So what's happening is nominalism's dying.
Yeah.
So I'll be a Christian. And it used to be, I'll be a Christian because I'm British. Well, why?
Yeah.
You know, and it raises questions about church and state.
Yeah.
But here's one for you, fellas. What do you think of this? There's only 2 countries in the world that have clerics, religious clerics, in the highest office. The UK in the House of Lords and Iran.
Wow.
So, raise these questions.
Good company. Yeah. No, we find, like, you know, even in the news and that, and I growing up, you know, fairly recently, more recently than Alan, you know, going through the school system and that, you feel like you're an idiot if you have faith. Like, almost there's, you know, this new atheist movement, and there's quite an aggressive agenda at times to say, you know, what if you believe in anything, you know, be spiritual, then you're just an idiot. But we find on the ground that the reality is that the number of people we speak to, hardly anyone I meet who'd say they're an atheist, or they say, like Rob, they say, I don't know what I am, you know, and they go, but I think there's something that connects us all, and, you know, love seems to be part of that. And I'm thinking, that, like, the atheism doesn't seem to be dominating things by any means. And I would, you know, and even interestingly, culturally, we would say, you know, as Christians, we would say maybe there's been a rejection of Christian worldview, a Christian worldview. That's maybe what we're seeing, kind of. But I'm not sure that society is benefiting from that. You know, even if you believe in God or not, you know, and a rejection of a Christian worldview, for me, I don't see a whole load more freedom for people. You know, it seems like we're struggling a little bit.
Seems like everything's falling apart. So.
I don't want to.
And what Christian worldview is getting rejected? So human rights is a Judeo-Christian worldview, not a secular worldview. You know, most of the foundations. If people have never come across a book, Tom Holland's Dominion book, right?
I read that one. It's a good one. They do it on an audio book, mate.
It's all about, though, the foundations of our culture all come from a Christian worldview. So most of the things people are arguing for when they think they're arguing against the church, they're actually arguing low-level theology, which is interesting in itself.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure people know what they're rejecting. I also think, for someone like me, I work in King's Cross, Zone 1 of central London. You have to get out of the left-leaning Twitterati that is Zone 1 and realise how most of the UK think, which is not like where I work in the middle of London, which is right near the Guardian building as well. That part of the world thinks differently to everywhere else. That's fine. And we need to get out and realise what people are at, what's going on, what people are thinking about. At the same time as well, the spiritual openness. People are interested in finding out about your Jesus. We've just done this research called Talking Jesus. In 2015, 1 in 5 non-Christians wanted to know more about your faith. It's now 1 in 3.
Wow.
You know, we've lived through mortality salience. Before the pandemic, if you got worried about dying, you got a moisturiser. Now people are actually thinking about dying.
Up here, Gav, they've all got big lips and massive eyelashes.
I know, mate.
We're evolving, I'm telling you.
Very good. So, Gav, what would you say then to someone who wasn't a Christian? What would you say? You know, in a world where, in the UK, where potentially people are opening up. You know, if those stats are right, and I believe them to be, that's been my experience on the ground. What would you say to someone who's kind of, you know, in reality probably now has not been to church, maybe in their, you know, it's low, you know, low numbers in terms of attendance nationally in church. So they maybe not been to church other than the odd funeral or wedding or whatever. And maybe they've not even heard, you know, heard the Bible stories anymore, or got that kind of Christian heritage. What would you say to someone but who maybe is open to if there's something, then I'm open to it. You know, what would your message be to them?
Yeah, I think we need to get realistic and say this stuff is too important to not actually rule in or rule out. I think the time of sort of passively going through life and not considering if there's something greater, that felt like what you could do in the years of plenty. We had years of plenty as a nation. Some of the years have been great, and that's like people thought everything was fine. The last 3 years, everything anyone depends on has let them down, apart from Jesus.
Wow.
So whether that's the football scores, whether that's the economy, whether that is, you know, the health system, we've got to stop believing that our politicians are God.
Yeah.
You know, every time there's a problem in this country, what are the politicians going to do? What can they do? And I would say to people that you need to, in this season, at least look into the bigger questions of life. How could you not? What more do you need to have go wrong to be questioning?
Yeah.
What I'd also say to people is, here's the little insider tip, right? You don't have to go through the doors of a church anymore. You can go onto YouTube.
Yeah.
Millions of people have checked out church in their pajamas and found that an amazing way to start engaging with Jesus.
Yeah.
The fear factor's removed, it's demystified. Go on YouTube, you'll find thousands of church services. Almost guarantee, if you go past the church and you think, I wonder what that's like, go and have a look on YouTube, you'll find it. And have a look at what's going on, push in and see. But here's the thing, is for the sake of ourselves and our children and our nation, we all need to ask, is there a greater authority than Rishi Sunak, than King Charles, than anything else? And there must be. And I think this is the time to ask. I'd also encourage people, if you really wanted to do a bit more than that, then online alpha course, right, is the best way of doing a course online that asks questions. But I think we've moved forward from the time where people could coast through life and cope. No one's coping. I know some of the wealthiest people in the UK, and they are struggling. I know some homeless guys by our office, and they are struggling. And you know what? In the end, they're struggling with the same thing. They haven't found the real meaning of life, and they need to push on that, ask those questions, and go forward.
Yeah, I mean, we did the kinds of online. We changed with the pandemic, online church, all that type of stuff. We changed our style completely, didn't we?
We did,
and we literally went from what you would probably recognize as an ordinary type of semi-charismatic type of church, block of worship, preach, all that. We completely changed. We're almost now a hymn prayer sandwich church with that in mind, and we sit on sofas and we chat more. It's less. It still is a talk, but it's less of a monotone. Is that the right word?
Monologue, maybe.
Monologue is the better word. Monologue chat, and we found lots of people who weren't going to church were checking us out, and then when we came back in person, quite a few of them turned up. And we're only a small church, Gav. We're not. And
so we rarely now, Gav, have like you say, we rarely have anyone turn up on a Sunday who hasn't done their homework first and checked us out. And so we're not getting, you used to get people come and they'd be like, they wouldn't know what we're like, and there's like, come and try you out, and within 10 minutes they're just nipping to the toilet but never coming back again or whatever. But now people are watching, and so if they've come, they've already know what to expect, and they're kind of saying, we've been intrigued by this, we want to come and be part of it. And I think of Lorraine, who during the pandemic, was watching church in her pajamas, come across it upstairs, and then it was her own time. She'd kick her fella out and be watching church in her PJs, and she noticed that he'd bring her a brew and kind of be trying to like geg in, have a little look at what was going on. And she was like, no, this is my time. Get out. But then she found him one Sunday morning commenting on Facebook, and she was fuming. But end of pandemic, and they both come along to church and kind of really become part of the community we've got. And I think that is such a real benefit for the church now. But I'm interested, Gav, because I from our perspective, we are completely changed in the way we operate as church, as a result of the pandemic. But if we talk a little bit to the church for a second, what are you seeing nationally? Because I've seen a little bit that people feel like we've just gone back to the way it was before. Are we missing an opportunity to?
I've sat in that many leaders meetings where we talk about what would we do if we had a blank page, how would we do church, and everyone dreams and all that. And then we had the pandemic, which was a blank page, and then everyone just went back. I couldn't believe it.
And we're not beating up on the church at all. Love the church, but I don't know, what would you say to the church into that kind of situation? How can we push on?
I think those that went back to how it was have now changed a little bit as well. As I travel around the country, I don't think we're stuck in the model we were before. The pandemic forced our hand. Now, therefore, anyone who's listening to this who doesn't go to church, right, I'm really sorry that church was the only thing in your community that realised it didn't need to change its style at all for 30 years. I'm sorry. Because we celebrate people sending missionaries around the world and engaging with culture, but here we just did what we wanted, and our way or the highway. Going into the pandemic, church was a set menu. Even time. Every church 10:30, 6:30. Nothing to do with Jesus, everything to do with milk. You used to milk cows at 9, milk cows at 5. Took half an hour to get the milk, half an hour to get clean, half an hour to get to church. It's not good enough.
Is that what it was?
That's what it's down to. That's why
I've never milked a cow in my life.
Someone did at some point. But we're stuck in that. But I think coming out of the pandemic, we're more of a buffet. Now, I know it's cheesy, but it's the same substance, but the style's different. Okay. So I'm going to places where yesterday I did carol service, and the carol service, they're expecting 2/3 of people online, 1/3 in the building. Brilliant. But they're having to do it differently. How we're engaging in different spaces. We thought people understood our Jesus and understood our stuff. Coming back to the census again, we assumed people were further on than they are. We talked about an alpha course. Alpha courses are brilliant, but they're probably not the best thing to go on if you've never asked anything. They're the best thing to go on when you've online church a few times, you've got a friend, because it's starting, because our starting position is not where people are. Yeah. So what we're doing now is we're mixing it up. We're doing things differently. Now, I think lots of churches need to stop doing the online. Okay. Because actually they're doing it really badly. It's taking a lot of resource, and there's another church down the road that can do it really well. That's fine.
You watched ours, yeah.
This is direct feedback, lads.
It's a bit personal. A bit personal.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
No, go on.
But I think we need to continue in that space. We need to be in other spaces. But even what you said about the preaching, well, I love preaching. But I think I love it more than anyone listening. Yeah. And I think we need to own that. Yeah. And we lost the microphones during pandemic, so why do we need to pick them up again in the same way? And the other thing I'd say is I have never known as many different types of church emerging as now. Okay. Lots of church planting, lots of churches in homes, lots of churches in other places, lots of things coming forward. So it's an exciting time, but the temptation just to go back is always going to be there. Yeah. And let's be honest, we know how to do it.
That's the thing about it, isn't it? We know how to do it. Like you, the one thing I could do was preach. Now I don't do that. I don't know what I can do. I'm actually rubbish at everything else. But I felt I could do that, if you get what I mean. So not doing that is quite uncomfortable for me in lots of ways. And yet, because of the people we've reached not doing that, I can't go back to doing that. So I'm in limbo myself, if that's a thing. But I find myself there because I find myself not doing what I was actually felt I was gifted to do a little bit, to doing something else, which is a bit, it feels harder if I'm not natural at it. I know I can't go back to doing what I did before, because somehow what we're doing now is at least scratching where people are itching. So we stuck with it.
We have,
yeah. But also for church leaders, I think we need to be honest and admit that at times we've made a demigod out of Sunday morning. Okay. Sunday morning, it's like that's our Wembley. Sunday morning is all that matters. And even how we measure church, how many people go to church, but that's how many people come on a Sunday. That's not, we need to get out of that model. We have started trying to do in an hour and a quarter a week what Jesus did in 3,000 hours. So 8,000 hours with his disciples over 3 years. Discipleship can't just be Sunday morning. Church that can't just be it. Now, church Sunday morning is really important. But I think we made that the only thing that really, really mattered. And coming out into this season, we need to start saying, no. What does it mean for you guys to make disciples where you find yourself in Liverpool? What does that actually mean? And what is the success? Because the only measurable, you'll know this, Alan, as a church leader, you go into a room with church leaders, first question, how big's your church? And you're like, why is that the first question? Yeah. How mature are your disciples should be the first question. Yeah.
And we've Alan says like we're a small church, and we are a small church, but we what we find is we when we grow, we're growing off people off the estate coming to our church, rather than we're not trying to put on a show to like get transfer growth or whatever. And I think sometimes it's easy to focus on that as churches, isn't it? It can be a quick win to get people to come along who are maybe just thinking, oh well, the worship's been a little bit flat in my place for the last couple of weeks, so I'll try this one out with a different band, But the focus to look out into our communities and think, how can we engage with people who are, as we're finding, open to faith, open to having a chat and talking and finding out more. But I think, we're going to have to bite the bullet and adjust the way we do things a little bit.
Yeah, well, adjust the way we talk about stuff, adjust the language. We talk in riddles that we come to the if you come to the pub, you wouldn't talk that way to your mates in the pub. That a lot of Christians use in language normally when it's this in club. It's like starting on a building site and everyone's talking about all this terminology that you haven't got a clue what it is because you've only just started on the building site. And we do that with faith. I go down, I'm a comedian at times, so I've been called that occasionally. And I go down green rooms and I talk to lots of comics who would say they're atheist, right? But then they start using terminology about something. And I'm listening to their stories and I'm thinking, we're not that far away. You're just using different language for what I would describe as God, and that's often the conversation I have with people in the green room, with other comedians. There are some obviously militant atheists in comedy as well, but I just think recognizing the language and adjusting yours to suit is much easier for me. It took me a while to say that, and it took me a while to realize it as a person.
Yeah. So. And I think you can tell, sometimes you can tell a Christian who actually doesn't have any non-Christian friends anymore. And sometimes when we just become a little huddle and we're not seeing other people come and join us, we can end up talking in riddles or in stuff that doesn't make sense. But when you've got someone in the room who sort of goes, "Oh, what you just said there, I have no idea what you're talking about. Could you explain it a little bit for me or whatever?" It keeps us a little bit grounded, doesn't it? In the sense that our faith has got to be real, hasn't it? It's got to work in the pub. It's got to work on, where in our workplace, wherever we find ourselves. So what would your message be then, Gav, as we come towards the end to Christians in the church today? What would the I've heard you talk, and like you say, you're all or nothing. You're really passionate, and I think the church needs that. The church does need that at this time. What would your message be to the church, to people who find themselves in church on a Sunday morning, people of faith, Christians in our country at this moment?
Yeah, well, I think this is our moment. I really do. I think this is our moment. It's the greatest moment to be alive for. I think we've got a moment that we haven't had. After the Second World War, church attendance in the UK was massively up for 18 months to 2 years. Wow. It then went back down below pre-Second World War levels.
Wow.
The diagnosis in history is that the church looked after itself, got itself okay, happy and comfortable again. And by the time the church had done that, those outside the church looked for hope somewhere else because it wasn't being provided by the church for them.
Wow.
We have not been through a war. We've largely been on our sofas or as key workers. We're about to go through a cost of living crisis. But this is the biggest crisis these last few years the UK has faced since the Second World War. Therefore, it won't be in our churches. It'll be in digital spaces, garden fences, sports clubs, other places. But people's openness and interest in Christianity is higher than it's ever been. We have prayed for revival. We have believed for change. And now we have, I'm not saying we're in it, but we have the opportunity for that to be possible. Let's not miss it by looking after ourselves. Now, we have to own our own fragility. Fragility is relative, but I've never felt so fragile. But I don't trust anyone that doesn't walk with a limp. If you don't walk with a limp, you're either delusional or you live in Disneyland. Can you imagine having faced the last few years without Jesus or the next few? We talk about life after death far too much, right? I'm delighted I've got eternal life, but I don't know how I get through today without Jesus. So this is our moment to show those around us what is different when you face a pandemic and then a cost of living crisis, but you stand on the unchanging one, the rock of ages. And here's the other thing as well. We don't want to just celebrate decisions. We're too good in the church. Get a hand in the air, give your life to Jesus. We want to celebrate disciples. So on average, it will take 6 Christians for someone else to become a mature, lifelong disciple. We need to make sure we're doing that. And the final bit within this is, for too long, we've made evangelism a personality type. Someone like me, larger than life, in your face, whatever. No, we're all witnesses. If you're a Christian and you've got a pulse, you're a witness. And I'm sick of people saying, but I'm not really very good at that. No. You know Jesus, you're a witness. I had someone meet me the other day who's a church leader who said, I don't really do the witnessing thing because I'm not very good at it. I care for people. I said, okay, I'll stop caring for anyone. He said, what do you mean? I said, I just won't care for anyone. I'm good at witnessing, so I just won't care for anyone. He said, no, you have to care for people. It's part of being a Christian. I said, there you go. You've answered your thing. You have to tell people about Jesus. It's part of being a Christian. So I think until we start seeing every Christian as a witness in their place, still we start celebrating together fully, still we start really seeing this as a move of the whole body, we may not see what we long to see. But I think now is the moment. And here's the thing, and I'll stop preaching in a moment. Witnessing is a muscle. That's what it is. It's a habit and a muscle. Most Christians are flabby in that area. The best time to build muscle is when it's easiest. The easiest time to do it in your witnessing is when the ground's more fertile. There's a greater openness in our culture to things of faith, not to church, to things of faith than there's ever been. Take this moment, grow those muscles, and then when it gets harder again, you won't even notice, because the habits will be formed and we'll be a witnessing church. Christianity is not about professionals. It's about all people who come to know Jesus, then being their part in the Great Commission. So let's go for it, is what I'd say.
Great. Brilliant. Fantastic.
We've had a great talk today, haven't we?
We have.
But I just want to lower the tone a little bit now again.
That's normally what Alan does.
I nearly called you Clive again. So Gav, we've got a thing at Finnegan's Bar that we want to know what that says. Can you see that?
Yeah, nougat.
Oh. Yes. Thank you,
See,
Gav.
that's a sudden thing.
what was I supposed to say?
You were supposed to say nugget.
Gav. No, nugget is N-U-G-G-E-T.
No,
thank you.
Where's the R in that, Gav? Tell me where it is.
And Alan, I just think.
But tell me where it is.
I think the language is just a little sophisticated for your palate.
I'm not French. I don't pronounce it like that. It's nugget.
Gav, I'm so lonely up north. I'm just surrounded.
We've just found out that Gav's a Tory.
That's
no.
He's got no political party.
My political allegiance can never be revealed because I need the EA. But what I will say,
I know that, but you've just confirmed you're a Tory by saying nougat.
My wife is a plastic scouser. My wife's a plastic scouser.
There we go.
So in our house with our kids, they get corrected depending on which parent heard them, and this is everything from.
Well, obviously, your wife will say nugget.
Yeah,
she'll say grass and bath and all
she's definitely a nugget.
Exactly, she's proper.
Yeah.
Well, as a wife, that's what I would say. Gav,
you know what I love though? I love Scouse humour.
Yeah.
And do you know the favourite bit of Scouse humour I've come across?
Go on.
At the Liverpool One shopping centre, the Everton shop's called Everton 2.
I know.
That's the bit of blues at work there, isn't it?
Bit of you go in the shop, Gav, and literally everything in the shop is, I'm not a Liverpudlian. Said in many different ways. Yeah. I've seen people walk past that shop and hold their breath. I went in to buy my son-in-law, who's a bit of blue, a ball for his birthday.
I can't believe you went in.
I went in, and as I got there, I got to the till, and I said, I have that, please. She went, yeah. And she went to put it in a bag, and I went, no, don't put it in a bag yet. I'll just carry it. I'm not carrying a bag now with me. I said, have you got any white bags? Just white ones? She looked at me like I was like, oh. Anyway, she looked at me like I was Peter Wilkelman or whatever his name.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's naughty. We've got well till now.
That was, yeah.
He's the guy who sold Wimbledon, is he?
He is, yeah.
Is he?
No, he's not. He's the guy that stole.
He stole.
No one sold.
He didn't sell it. No, he took it. He just picked it up and moved it. Yeah. Oh, you mustn't like him, Gav. He must test your Christianity every day.
Well, the only thing in my house, the worst swear word is to say MK and then the D word after it. Because that's not. You can call them MK franchise. That's fine. Yeah. But it is what it is. What I'll say though is power of community. We had 3,500 season ticket holders.
Yeah.
We were offered 80% off for 10 years to go to Milton Keynes with the season ticket. 17 did. The rest formed AFC Wimbledon.
Fabulous.
7 people. Are they like the prodigal sons who one day you'd welcome back?
No, they're the kind of people that have half and half shirts and scarves. They're
not Can you imagine being that type of person?
iPads at the match.
Yeah.
we normally we have a VIP list here.
I don't know if you can see it, Gav, in the background.
Yeah.
We might be a bit far away from
This is our VIP membership. And so what we do, and we in true Finnegan's levels of preparation, we didn't pre-warn you.
No.
Gav's thinking, what is this? But basically, at the end of an episode of Finnegan's, we get people to tell a funny story. So for you, it might be something from preaching at church, something funny that's happened, or something just in life generally. And you tell a funny story. And then if it's a good one, then what happens is...
Get them on the wall, lad.
We get you on the wall. You go on the wall. But if it's a bad story, then sadly, what we have to do is we have to bar you.
You're bad, lad.
And then you'd never be able to return to Finnegan's, which is...
which would be sad, because I've enjoyed this.
I've enjoed this conversation, Gav.
So we'd like you on the wall.
We'd love you on the wall.
Try your best.
Yeah.
Normally people voting, but no one's watching this at the moment.
Okay.
So it's just me and him you've got to impress.
Yeah.
this nugget.
Have you got a funny story you could share with us, Gav?
I've got all kinds of embarrassing stories. I'll tell you what. When my mum and dad moved to America, I was 17. I was in my lower sixth at school, and as we said earlier, I wasn't a Christian or anything, but I moved in with this old couple from the church, and they were from Yorkshire. Now I was living in Peckham in South London, right? Now I didn't even know where Yorkshire was, anything. But this Yorkshire couple, they spoke a certain way. The guy was quite stern. He would say, "Hey up, lad," whack me on the leg, and he was very stern. It'd come 3 days I'd lived there, and I finally had to succumb to doing a number 2 in their loo for the first time. Right? So I go upstairs, the house is empty, and I do my business, and I flush the loo, and the loo starts pouring out the top, and I can't stop it. And what I've done is coming out the top, and eventually I stop it, right? And it's gone through the floor, into the cupboard below. It's covered the walls, everything else. It's disaster. I'm panicking already. My family have moved to the other side of the world. I rush to the kitchen. I get the cloths, that they use for cleaning the plates and stuff, and I start wiping the walls and things. I clear it up as well as I can. The couple get back from work, and the stern guy walks in, and he's like this. He says, "What have you done to my house?" I told him what I'd done, and genuinely from that day on, I lived with them for a year. I was not allowed to use the toilet inside. At the end of the garden, they had an outdoor loo that was out of use, that they repurposed as my loo. So even in the night, if I needed to go to the loo, I had to go down the garden to use, because I was not considered suitable to use the inside toilet.
Wow. That is amazing.
He was trying to toughen you up, you southern softy. Come on.
It helped.
I could just imagine you trying to stop. I mean, you're not prepared for that scenario.
Coming off the top.
Wow.
That was boss.
Well, Gav, I think, Gav, as long as if we could set up some sort of toilet in the garden for you, I think you're in. Basically, we'll let you in.
Yeah.
Is that all right? All right. Well, Gav, we'll stick you up on the wall here. We're going to stick you over here next to our mate, Ian.
Ian Yates probably knows him.
There we go. Yeah, I know Ian Yates, worship leader. How many people get barred?
No one's been barred yet. I come close last week to getting barred out my own pub because I was the guest. But
it was a bit of a power play from me. Alan was the guest, and I suddenly realised if I could get him barred, then this Finnegan's is mine. We could rename it and everything, but that it didn't work out so well, did it? No. But no one's been barred, so thank goodness for that.
Yeah,
thank goodness.
We better let Gav go.
We better
busy man.
Gav, mate, thank you so much for coming to do this. We really appreciate you. It's last orders, isn't it?
Yeah, it's last orders, even though we're not drinking.
We're not drinking. We're drinking hot juice.
Very early in the morning.
God bless you, Gav. Thanks so much for joining us. And we'll speak to you.